Has it started already? Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. Tonight recipe will be led by me, Tiffany, Vivi, Hafsa, and tonight we'll be making a quinoa and veggie power bowl. So as we're just transitioning from summer into fall, we're going to be using seasonal vegetables for this dish, such as winter squashes, kale, and Brussels sprouts. And this dish is great to make as a meal prep, but also as a meal prep for the rest of the week. This meal is also microwavable friendly. So in your ingredient bag, there should be microwave modification instructions. So if you are doing the microwave option, then you can follow the instructions here. And everything in your bag we've provided for you is pre-measured, except the salt and olive oil. So we can get started right now. So we want to make sure your hands are washed first. So if you haven't done that, please do that now. And another thing we asked you to do in the homework on the bag was to turn on your oven to 425 degrees and to also start boiling your water. So we also want to have our mise en place. As you see here, I have all the spices and sauces right here and the vegetables prepped for us. And other things we will need is a cutting board. And to have a stable platform, you can also wet a paper towel underneath and leave it here because we are cutting hard vegetables today. Other things you will need is a cutting board, a knife, a spoon, which I have over here. And we'll also need the small saucepan, which should be boiling the water right now. Okay. And feel free to pause this at any time if you have any questions or concerns, and Hafsa, Vivi, or I can help you with that. So now we are first going to prep the vegetable broth. So we're going to take our vegetable cube right here, and we're going to go to our boiling water. You guys over here. So. All right, so we have our boiling water right over here. And what we want to do is get our vegetable cube. And we're gonna open this up.
So essentially what that is concentrated vegetable broth.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy a can or a jar that you might not use all up. This is shelf stable. It's a great way to get that vegetable broth flavor without a lot of trouble. Yes.
But if you also want to do this in the future, you can also use other store-bought broths such as chicken broth or beef broth, or
water.
Yeah, or even just water. So with this, we want to mix it or even use a whisk until the bouillon chunks dissolve into the water.
It's okay too if it doesn't fully dissolve because while the quinoa is cooking, it will finish dissolving in.
Okay.
So what that's doing is adding a lot of flavor into your quinoa. The quinoa is kind of the base of your bowl.
Yeah. So we have it like this. So it's a little bit chunky, but that should be fine because we are adding the quinoa. Hafsa, do you want to walk us through the quinoa, please? Asa, I think you're muted, so I don't know if you're talking or not.
Sorry, so we are going to we have the pre-measured out quinoa. We're gonna take the broth and we will add our quinoa, and usually quinoa, it can be washed, but we're not gonna do so today. It's usually recommended to do so because it's usually like it has saponin, which is a compound that's bitter tasting that basically coats the tiny seeds. It's used as a defense mechanism, actually, which is used to protect itself from birds and other predators. But usually ones from the grocery store now these days don't have as much, so they're not as bitter as before. So we will add that to the quinoa to our broth, and we will bring it to a boil. So yeah, quinoa is a complete protein. Even though it's just a tiny seed, it provides a lot of protein for the human body, basically all 9 essential amino acids. And we can also use quinoa can be used in many different ways, such as you can add it to your granola, homemade energy bars, or even like replace it for oatmeal, as you use it as an replacement for oatmeal. You can also add it to salads and even desserts. So now while we wait for that to boil.
So we're just gonna wait for this to boil, and we're just gonna wait until it reaches to a boil. As you can see here, it's almost there. And once it reaches to a boil, we're gonna turn the heat down to low and cover that. And it's gonna cook for around 10 to 15 minutes. So we'll wait for this to boil a little bit.
One of the best things about quinoa is the fact that it cooks so quickly, right? So it's a great grain to know how to cook because you can whip it up as fast as you can get white rice or even pasta. So it's a nice alternative to some of the other grains that we see so often.
So now it's getting to a boil now, and we can bring that heat down to low. And we'll cover this, and we'll give that 10 to 15 minutes. And then now we're going to prep the vegetables, and Vivi is gonna guide us along through that.
Okay, so Tiffany is going to start preparing the Brussels sprouts. So this recipe, it calls for more Brussels sprouts than you need, around like 14 or 16 ounces. However, we provided you enough to make 1 to 2 bowls. So just remove the Brussels sprouts from your bag, and we're first going to rinse them off first. Yeah, and after rinsing them, just bring it back to the cutting board. And now we're going to cut the Brussels sprouts. So first, you're going to cut off the ends first. Here you can also remove any damaged or bruised outer leaves if you see any. And after removing those leaves, you should be left with a fresh and tight Brussels sprout to work with, like Tiffany is showing you. So if you're cooking Brussels sprouts as a whole, you would create an X with your knife on the bottom of the Brussels sprouts so they are able to cook evenly. But for this recipe, we're going to just cut it in half. So while you guys are cutting the Brussels sprouts, I'm just going to mention some knife safety skills, such as make sure to have a good grip with your dominant hand by pressing your thumb against the side of the blade where it meets the handle. Then put your index finger on the other side of the blade. So as we mentioned earlier, everything is measured out for you guys. So just cut the amount of Brussels sprouts provided in your ingredient bag. And some fun facts about Brussels sprouts is that it provides antioxidants for the body to fight off cell damage. Thus, it also helps with anti-inflammatory properties. Brussels sprouts also promote iron absorption. A little under 1 ounce of Brussels sprouts provides 5 grams of fiber and also is packed with 5 grams of protein. So just continue cutting your Brussels sprouts and be patient with it because no need to rush.
You mentioned there's some different sized Brussels sprouts, and some of them you may be cutting in half and others in quarters, just so that they're all roughly the same size going onto the sheet pan, right?
Mhm.
If you haven't cooked with Brussels sprouts before, another fun thing to do with Brussels sprouts is to shave them. So they're like little mini cabbages. You can essentially cut them in half and then run a knife through them to cut them very finely, kind of shredding them. And those can be eaten raw. You can make those into a salad or a slaw. You probably know in the grocery store. But you have to saute those off, and they saute off really, really quickly. And it's really delicious, and it's really fun and interesting how different the flavor is depending on how you cook them. If you don't like Brussels sprouts, or don't think you like Brussels sprouts, try them different ways. Point because you may like them cooked a different way or cut a different way.
Okay, so we're just cutting the rest of the Brussels sprouts. And then after this, we'll move it onto the roasting pan. And then we'll prep the other vegetables first.
Okay, so Tiffany is done cutting the Brussels sprouts. So now you guys can just gather all of the Brussels sprouts and transfer it to a roasting pan, and we'll come back to that later. All right, so moving on. We're going to now prepare our squashes. So first, I'm just going to talk about the different winter squashes available during the fall season. All squashes do provide similar nutritional value. They're all rich in nutrients and low in calories. So there are about 12 different squashes varieties, and here we have 3 to show you. The original recipe calls for butternut squash, which is what we have here.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, that's the butternut squash. So we didn't decide to use the squash today due to time, since the skin would need to be peeled beforehand. Sometimes the skin of the butternut squash is pretty tough, and the flesh of the butternut squash is also orange, and it's used in various soups, stir fries, in replace of mashed potatoes as well. So when you are choosing butternut squashes, look out for the smaller sizes because they do taste sweeter. So next we have the delicata squash, which has a moist, creamy yellow flesh that tastes and smells like a blend of corn, butternut squash, and sweet potato. They're often called sweet potato squash. The skin is edible when cooked, and this type of squash is available late summer throughout the fall. And they are best eaten when steamed or baked. So today, Tiffany will be working with this squash. However, you guys will be working with the acorn squash. So some fun facts about acorn squash is that it's got its name due to its shape. Actually, the shape of the vegetable resembles a big acorn. So for your acorn squash, it's optional to peel off the skin. However, it's not necessary because the skin is soft enough to eat after we do roast it. So further on, just keep the skin on. It's also packed with fiber and antioxidants. So before we cut the squash, you guys are going to go ahead and wash it.
I've washed mine already. I'm working with the delicata squash just because my acorn squash went bad. If yours went bad, you can still use the parts that are okay. I'm just gonna start using this because most of my acorn squash is bad right now. So I washed mine already and Vivi can guide us along through the same thing. So the way to cut squash is pretty much the same. So just follow the same steps that I'm doing here and Vivi can guide us along.
All right, so now we're going to cut the squash. Hold the acorn squash sideways with a firm grip. Make sure your fingers aren't in the way when you're cutting it. And you're going to take a thin slice off the top and the bottom of the squash. And make sure to take your time because it's very hard.
Tiffany, remember the trick about microwaving for a minute instead of having a hard time cutting it?
Oh yeah, you can also microwave it. Do they poke holes in it before that?
You can poke it with a fork a couple of times, pierce it a couple of times. So if you're having a really hard time cutting the squash, pierce it a couple of times with a fork and then microwave it for about a minute. And that will soften it a bit and soften the skin a bit so that you can get your knife into it more easily.
So if you're having trouble cutting through that, you can also do that right now. I think I'm fine with mine. So I think Vivi, did you tell them to lay it this side down and then?
Not yet. So if you guys are going to microwave it, you can do that now.
Anybody having trouble with their squash? This is probably the hardest part of the
Yeah.
process is cutting that darn squash.
Mhm.
But at least we don't have to peel it. Is everybody good to move on to the rest of the squash cutting?
You can also do the emotes on Zoom. Thank you, Shanti.
All right, I think we can move on.
Okay, yeah, we can move on.
Okay, so after you guys cut the sides off, you're just going to lay it flat side down like Tiffany is doing here and use your knife to cut it directly in half, straight down the middle. And here, take your time, be careful because it could like slip. So you can also just rotate the squash.
Yay!
There you go.
All right, so we have the squash open and you can see all the seeds right there in the middle. And now Tiffany is going to just pick it out with her spoon. And these seeds are also present in other squashes like butternut squash. These seeds can also be roasted just like pumpkin seeds. If we do have when we do have extra time in the end, Tiffany will show you guys how to roast the seeds. So just use your spoon and pick it out and put it aside, and we'll come back to that later at the end.
That's a good point. Don't throw those seeds away. If you have some extra time, you can always roast those and make a great snack or salad topping. They would actually go really well on the food, then if we had time to do that.
All right.
Okay, so you have all your seeds out. We're going to place the squash flat side down, and Tiffany is going to cut the squash into 1-inch wedges. So you don't need to cut them too thick as it will take too long to cook, but also keep in mind to not cut it too thin because it could turn into a mushy texture. So you want it to be around all the same thicknesses, just so it can be cooked evenly. And you can also cut off any bruise and damaged spots if you see any. So take your time because it's pretty hard to cut into.
So typically with acorn squash, I would cut it this way as wedges. I don't know if you guys see that this way. For this one, I'm doing it lengthwise just because it's a longer squash.
All right. So now we are going to move on to cube the wedges. You're just going to turn the wedges to the side and start cutting it down into cubes. So Tiffany is cutting it into using a bunch of wedges. However, you can just take one individual wedge and cut it into cubes if it's easier for you.
All right, so we have our cubes.
Okay, so you're just going to transfer the cubes to a baking tray, a roasting pan, and we'll come back to it later. And now I will pass it on to Hafsa so she can explain to you guys how to prepare the kale.
So kale actually there are very different types of kale, and they come in different colors and shapes. And the ones we usually see in the grocery stores are either Tuscan kale or curly kale. We're using curly kale today, but you would usually cut all the kale usually around like the same way. And we provided you pre-washed and pre-cut kale, although we may cut it down further. And Tiffany is going to show you how to properly cut kale.
Okay, so we have a chard right here. Professor Kubota got this from her garden actually. And the way to cut this is the same way you would cut kale. So Hafsa, can you guide us through, please?
Yeah, so first we're going to cut the stem off. We want to hold the leaves with your non-dominant hand and use the knife on your dominant hand to cut the stem off. And we're going to do this with all of the kale stems provided.
I'll just use one as an example today.
We want to roll the leaves and slice them into thin slices. And you want to make sure you have a firm grip on the base of your knife. since we have provided you pre-cut kale, you can just follow what Tiffany's doing with the kale and chop it further, as mentioned previously. Kale actually is in the same family as Brussels sprouts, and so they therefore provide similar nutritional benefits. It's a great source of fiber, iron, and calcium.
So you want to cut into smaller pieces like that. I don't know if you can see it, but it's into smaller pieces. I'll do that with the rest of the kale in the bag. So we're just gonna grab this bunch and then just chop it down even further. We want it in chopped pieces because we are just gonna have it wilted down in our quinoa. Actually, we should check our quinoa right now. So it looks like it's practically done. So as you can see, our quinoa is pretty fluffy, and usually we would fluff it up with a fork. So we'll take our fork right here and just fluff it up. And that's how your quinoa should look like. I'm just gonna cut this off and cover it for now until we finish the kale. So we're gonna use all the kale in your bag. The recipe calls for around 1 cup. Okay. So now that our kale is chopped, we can add it to our quinoa that's warm right now. So now that it's warm and still warm, and add our quinoa in, and the warmth will help wilt down the leaves. Just mix that in. And as you can see, it's also cooking the leaves. That's your kale and quinoa mixture. And now I can put it to the side for now. Okay, and now we're gonna prep the avocado. Oh, yes, actually. We can actually do the roasting now. Vivi, can you guide us to how we're gonna season the roast vegetable?
Yes. All right, so now coming back to the Brussels sprouts that we prepared earlier. First, we're going to add about 1 tablespoon of oil provided in your bag.
Big drizzle, right? There's no that.
Next, you're going to add the adobo sauce. Adobo sauce will spice up the Brussels sprouts, so add as much as you would like. Tiffany here will add around 1 tablespoon.
So that can be spicy.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you
Oh.
don't like it spicy, then go light on that. Maybe start with, half a teaspoon or a teaspoon if you want the light spice kind of person. And always you can add more next time if you feel like you wanted it more spicy.
Then you're going to add the maple syrup.
So this is pre-measured already. It's a tablespoon. You just add everything.
And a sprinkle of salt. All right, so for this step, you're just going to go ahead and toss the Brussels sprouts with the seasoning. Don't be afraid to use your hands for this step because it's going to allow the seasoning and oil to coat each individual piece.
And once they're well coated, just spread them out so they're in a single layer. And if you have space, don't let them touch each other. They'll brown a little bit better if they have some space between them. Yeah.
Okay, so after spreading the Brussels sprouts, we're just going to leave this to the side, and now we are going to prepare the acorn squash. So add the oil in now, 1 tablespoon. We'll next add the smoked paprika. So this step, as I mentioned earlier, like the adobo sauce, this you can add to your own liking. If you don't like it too spicy, you don't have to add the whole thing like Tiffany is doing here.
And usually smoked paprika comes in sweet and spicy. I think this one is the sweeter version. So it won't be spicy, but it'll give you a really nice smoky flavor.
Okay.
And then add your garlic powder and sprinkle some of the salt in there. And then go ahead and use your hands to toss the squash and the seasoning together, just to get a nice coat on each individual piece, and then spread evenly on the tray. All right, so now we're just going to go ahead and wash your hands before we place the Brussels sprouts and the butternut squash into the oven.
So now
So-
this is the oven.
Yeah, we'll be roasting it for 25 minutes and we'll come back at the halfway mark to check up on it.
All right. So do we want to prepare our garnish now? So can you guide us?
So
how to-
yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, we have our avocado here, and avocado contains high levels of healthy fats, monounsaturated fats, and these help you feel fuller between meals. First, we want to cut the avocado lengthwise around the seed. You can do this by holding the avocado in your hand and cutting around the seed. But the safest way to cut an avocado is to lay it down on your cutting board and cut it lengthwise and keep rotating the avocado till you reach all around the seed. And then you'll twist the two halves apart. We will now remove the seed from the avocado. There are different ways to remove the seed. One way is to take your pointer finger and middle finger and hold the avocado down by the seed and push the seed out with your thumb. We suggest this way if you're not comfortable using a knife. The other way is to, with the knife, if you're more comfortable with it, you can set the avocado on the cutting board and give the knife a tap into the seed. Or for a firmer grip, you can hold the avocado with a towel underneath and take the sharp edge of your knife. You can use a smaller knife if you'd like, and tap the seed and twist the seed out.
Usually it sticks onto the avocado, but it looks like the avocado is loose. The avocado seed is loose, so we're just gonna take that out. But if it does get stuck onto your knife, the way you take off the seed is from the top and not the bottom, so you don't cut yourself. So you just push down with your thumb. And the seed should come off your knife.
So we'll now take our avocado halves and peel it, and we're gonna slice the avocado.
And now we're gonna cut it. Like so. And that's our garnish for later. We'll just keep that to the side for now. Okay. And then since we have our vegetables in the oven, I can probably show you how to make the seeds right now. We're just gonna have to wait for the vegetables. So we're gonna take our seeds and we're gonna usually use a colander, but you can just rinse off the pulp and the strings out until there's no more left and we have the seeds.
Okay.
So Professor Kibota is getting me a colander right now, but yeah, just make sure you're rinsing off everything, the flesh off the seeds, and then you'll be left with seeds. You could also just pick it out first and then rinse your seeds, but I think it's easier to have a strainer and then just run water through it. Well, I prefer to use a strainer. There's all my seeds with the flesh on there. And then I think come to the sink. We'll just rinse it. And the seeds should start coming apart from the flesh. Just work your way through. And be patient with it.
Essentially, Tiffany, this is the same thing you would do for pumpkin seeds, like pumpkins at Halloween time,
Oh, yeah.
right? So any of the splashes, you can rinse the seeds like this.
And you can see the seeds are coming off the flesh slowly. Right, so I have that separated to start with flesh. And you just want to be left with seeds. So there's a little bit of flesh left, but we can probably take that out while we are drying the seeds. So we want to dry it with either paper towel or a towel. I'm going to use paper towel. You can place one paper towel down or a few. And we'll place our seeds in. And you want to make sure all your seeds are dry so they can roast evenly. And so that also that when it's all dry, it won't be moist when it's cooking. You want it to be nice and crunchy after. So a lot of people also leave this out for, I've seen a couple recipes that people leave this out for even 24 hours so it can dry even further. I don't think that's completely necessary. You can just try to get all the water out right now. Also take the flesh out. And the way to season this is by using oil. And the oil helps the seasoning stay onto the seeds, but also helps with the roasting. And you can season it however you like. I usually like to eat my seeds simple, so garlic salt would do for me. You can also add paprika. You can also do no salt if you're trying to cut down the salt. A lot of people also add oregano, garlic powder.
Nutritional use would make it chewy.
Oh yes, that's a good idea. So once your seeds are dry, you would place it onto a bowl or a plate, and then you would season it. So we'll do that right now. Remember, all you want are the seeds and not the flesh. So most of the flesh is sticking onto the paper towel, which is good. Great. And you can season this with oil. So I have oil right here. Just a little bit. Usually you can just put a teaspoon for around this much. And then like around a 4th teaspoon of salt, or just even a sprinkle of salt works. Then you would just mix that and put it onto a roasting pan. So you can probably bake this later because the degrees to cook this is a lot lower than what we're using right now. So our temperature right now is 425, but to cook this, it should be 320. And you would place this on a roasting pan for 10 to 15 minutes or more. You just want it to be golden brown and you know that when it's done. All right. And then halfway you want to check through your vegetables. I know we just placed that in, so we'll just leave it in there for now. We can probably start assembling the bowls. So you would want your vegetables ready, but you can also start plating. So the first thing you would add is the kale and quinoa mix.
So you didn't really need to add any salt or pepper to that because you added in the vegetable broth, right? Which already has quite a bit of salt in it, so it's well seasoned already, right?
Yeah. It's also seasoned, but we also have a dressing. Oh, we have a dressing that we're gonna make, so we're gonna do that right now.
If you made the quinoa with water, you might want to add a little bit of salt.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So since we're using vegetable broth, we don't have to add any more seasoning to the quinoa. Right now we can make the dressing. So for the dressing, it calls for a 1/4 cup of oil. And then you're also going to use 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar.
Is theirs already made?
Oh yes, there's your dressing is already made, but I'm just showing you how to make it in case you want to make it at home for the future reference. So for yours doesn't have salt. So if you do want to add salt to yours, I would do that right now. And to continue with this, we would add the honey. You can substitute this with maple syrup if that's all you have on hand.
Or agave, or even a pinch of sugar?
Oh yes,
Any
agave works. Yes, any sweetener would work for this. Right. And then we also have 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. So we're gonna place this in.
Tiffany, what is the Dijon mustard doing?
It adds like a sourness, but also complements the acidity of the apple cider.
I think will act as an emulsifier.
Oh yes, that as well.
This is a nice vinaigrette. If you didn't have all these ingredients, you don't have mustard, just leave it out, it's not a problem, you just want to make sure you have some sort of acid like the apple cider vinegar and then a little bit of oil. And then that balance with all the veggies that you got, that and with the sweetener is really nice here too.
Exactly. So after that, we're going to whisk it. So you're just gonna whisk it like so. You also want to add a pinch of salt. So you're just gonna whisk it. And that should create your dressing. So with this bowl, you can use any store-bought dressing that you like, or you can just top it off with something simple like sriracha if you don't have time, or Yeah, any homemade or store-bought dressing, you could pair it with this bowl. Now we can check on the roasted vegetable. Okay, our Brussels sprouts are roasted. We can flip this over. So that it cooks evenly. I think this one is cooking a little faster because of the maple syrup. So the sugar is crystallizing a lot faster compared to the butternut squash. I mean, compared to the acorn squash for you guys, but delicata squash for me.
Tiffany, you could swap your trays too. That might be a good thing
Oh,
for them
yeah.
to do as well. If the bottom tray is cooking differently than the top tray, now would be a good time to swap the trays.
Can also give your acorn squash the sauce and also like a delicata squash. Whatever squash you are using.
If you work it, is it close to you then?
Yeah, it's super close to being done. So different ovens are different and it varies. So if it feels like it's almost done, just give it a few minutes. If it's done right now, you can take it out right now. I'm just gonna give this a few more minutes because looks like it's almost done.
So she's just checking that with a fork, just to see if it's a fork tender.
And this rest sauce almost done. I'm just gonna probably give it 3 more minutes for both of them.
That's one of those things, Brussels sprouts you can eat raw. So if you take the Brussels sprouts out a little crunchy, it's okay.
Yeah.
But the squash, you definitely want to have that cooked through. Right?
Yes. So we'll probably give that a minute or two. And then we can start finishing our plating up.
So I'm excited for people to try the squash. If you've never had acorn squash before,
Yeah.
it's a nice one to work with.
Mhm.
It's relatively easy to work with.
Yeah.
You don't have to peel it, right?
Yeah.
The butternut squash you have to peel, and that can be a little bit challenging. It's not, it's not really hard that you can't do it, but it certainly takes more time.
Yeah.
So the squashes that you don't have to peel can be put in the oven much more quickly. So delicatas are a really nice one to work with. Love working with delicata. And it's super inexpensive. So if you go to Trader Joe's, delicata squash right now are like 99 cents each.
Yeah, that's very affordable.
And there's some little ones, but there's bigger ones. So you can just choose. It doesn't matter. They're all 99 cents.
That's great.
Same thing with the other squash. The butternut squash right now at Trader Joe's are like $1.99.
Mhm.
Good value.
Yeah,
The
that's great.
honey nut squash, which are the newest ones, the cute little.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. They look like a mini butternut squash. They're amazing. It's a relatively new squash to the market, right? We haven't seen that a lot before, but in the last couple of years, it's become really trendy. They cook up a lot like butternut squash that you need to be peeled, but they're really easy to work with, and they're sweet. So, and they're a manageable size. If you're cooking for yourself, you don't end up with a ton of squash. So it's a nice one to play with also. So highly encourage y'all to try some of the different squash
Yeah.
if you haven't tried them before.
Thank you. So now we're gonna check on our vegetables. And they look about done. So we can take them out right now. And you can turn down your oven if you plan to do this use right after or turn it off. Now we can get to plating. So now we have the kale and quinoa mixture on. I'm gonna take either one. You can start with either one. I'm gonna take our delicata squash first, or acorn squash if you'd like. We're gonna just place that on top. Then you can also take our Brussels sprouts. Place that on top. So with the delicata apron squash, you don't want to overcook it because if you do mix it, it's gonna become mushy. So if it seems as if it's already cooked, then I would take it out right now. And then after that, we can add our dressing. We're gonna add our honey Dijon dressing. And then we're gonna take our avocado. And this avocado will be our garnish. So you can garnish this bowl any type of way you'd like. I've seen people use lemon or cilantro. You can also top it off with more hot sauce if you like your bowl hot. So yeah, that's how your bowl should look like. And for the rest of the food, you can either store it in storage containers, like the food prep containers separately or together, and you can eat it throughout the week. You can also keep the dressing on the side if you'd like. You can also put it in Ziploc freezer bags and can be kept in the freezer for a few weeks, and then you could eat that along the way if you ever get hungry. And yeah, that's all for our recipe. And if you want to show your guys' final product, you can turn on your camera right now and show us. If you have any questions or concerns or any comments, then you could unmute your mic or type in the chat if you like. And yeah, that's all for today's recipe. And thank you for joining us.
Tiffany,
Thank you guys.
What was it?
Wanna let them know when the next one is?
Oh yeah, so we do have 2 more upcoming events. We have the virtual cooking on October 20th, which is in about 2 weeks. That one should be fun because it's a coconut chickpea curry, and we're using pumpkins for that one. So that's to celebrate Halloween because pumpkins. And then we also have a Thanksgiving theme, which was going to be on November 10. And it's going to be for both those events, going to be on the same time from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. So make sure to check that out as well.
And I did post a link to the survey, since you were here, if they can fill that out, that's great, and we'll send the recording later tonight, so you can watch along again, if there's anything you missed, or see it, along with the survey link there as well, so.
All right, thank you for joining us. Thank you so much.
Casey said thank you, the acorn squash is delicious.
Yay, I'm glad.
Thank you, Knox, for coming.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.